welcome once again to MTV Community Forum. Wherever you are, greetings. I'm your host, Byron Campbell, and of course, Chris Diali, our co-host. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Byron. Good evening to our listeners and viewers, and welcome you again to another edition of Community Forum.
Chris, we have a lot to talk about tonight, but first of all, let's tell our viewers who our guest is tonight.
Yes, our guest this evening will be none other than Councillor Ruggles Ferguson Casey. He'll be joining us to talk about what is happening in the region of the CCJ and some of the so-called controversies. And we're going to throw in a few other things like judicial and legal services and what is happening there and so on and so forth. So
Chris,
we'll have an interesting
Chris, the first thing I want to mention is my observation. I want to call it what is happening in our rural development. And I want to raise the question of the economic disparity in our rural communities. That is, and to say that our rural poverty rates remains disproportionately high compared to the other parts of the country. Whereas the national average of poverty is about 20 to 25%. In our rural communities, particularly the areas agricultural belts like St. Mark's, parts of St. Patrick's, St. Andrews, it's very bad there, the rate there. So you have a lot of what we call socioeconomic strain. So I just want to mention that programs like the Bushing program and school support and all of these are critical for these communities. A lot of people talk there about, the agricultural sector is being affected also there negatively, meaning absence of farm boards, absence of support, the marketing. Remember, the marketing board is not operating in its normal way. We've seen no development there. So the question, Chris, here is the long-term strategy, how we move beyond temporary safety nets towards a more sustainable rural economic development and direct tourism links, because that's important, would make a difference.
Well, this is not new news from the standpoint that these constituencies that you mentioned have always had higher than normal poverty rates.
Yes.
And when you try to dig deep to find out what is the cause, a large part of it has to do with employability.
Yep.
How the people living in those societies, are they employable, in what areas and what fields? There have been traditionally fishing villages, agricultural-based villages, and so on, and some in construction. And it is the thinking of most governments that when you have your economy, a major sector like construction is going to filter down.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't seem to be happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so government needs to look deeper and differently, and to see how we could get our people in the rural economy excited about certain things. I always said, for years, Victoria is a big fishing village, and Wharf, on the western side. We build jetties and we have freezing houses for fish. Nothing is wrong with that, it's fine. But why couldn't we do a canning industry to support what is happening there with fishing? And if we get fish that is not exportable.
Or the first grade, yeah.
Right. We can it, and we create employment right in those things there, because we set up a big canning facility, and we could export it. So we have to start thinking differently about the value add that they bring to it. The farm roads and agriculture is a major issue.
Yeah.
I was seeing recently that 90% of our cattle come from St. Vincent.
Well, that's the other point, Chris.
And St. Vincent just declared that they're no longer shipping any cattle to Grenada. So here it is, we don't do much rearing of cows and so on. So what is going to happen for fresh beef? I mean, when this policy comes into place, we're going to struggle for getting fresh beef.
That's correct.
And that is another major thing the agriculture department needs to start looking at. How do we incentivize
So the opportunities
farmers?
are there, clearly.
Yeah. In the rural economy, I mean, if you give enough incentive, probably people will go back seeing about cows and you get anything.
No doubt, Chris. Chris, the other thing making the news, of course, has been the General Hospital and the statutory transformation that's taking place there. It's understood that they are moving to hire key personnel, but the question is, for me, in other words, a question of stakeholders inclusion, unions and other factors here, evaluating whether the public sector unions, healthcare workers' representatives have been meaningfully engaged and addressing potential impacts on care affordability for low-income families, Chris. That is one of my concerns there, to what extent these factors would be taken on board. But clearly, I would say there are clearly opportunities there to increase the income or the viability of the hospital through fees.
Well, statutarization is not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
Because essentially what statutarization do is to put the hospital facilities or the healthcare facilities, including primary healthcare, to be managed by a board that is going to be appointed to run the healthcare facilities.
Yeah.
The issue, of course, is who you put on the board, and how much political people are put on this board versus professionals. And that is another aspect of it, because you don't want people coming just carrying out the same policies that we had before because of political appointments. That being said, at the end of the day, a properly run statutory organization can bring benefits to the staff, because we will have more professionals coming on board. They might be paid differently or paid better. The nurses, including the doctors and all the orderlies and so on, as part of that facility. And of course, the type of care and how we administrate the type of care. You mentioned about revenue. I think we woefully underpay and charge for services at the General Hospital. And even though we have Mount Sinai now helping with changing around of certain things that they do, which is a positive thing, and I compliment the Minister for Health on what they're doing there. But at the end of the day, the management of the facility and the cost leakages and all of that are things that statutarization may assist.
So we've seen it as a positive development.
I think
Chris, related to health, however, is a question of public health security and escaped tuberculosis patients, So I think the key factor here for me is what immediate structured and legal safeguards must the state implement to ensure secure isolation while maintaining human care and protecting public health. That seems to be an issue that would have been raised with this escape that we saw.
And it speaks to a weak area, obviously, and infrastructure for the isolation unit and ward, and what is happening there. And the security there, of course, has to be different to the security elsewhere in the hospital, because this is probably contagious or highly contagious diseases, hence the reason you have been isolated. Although I think I didn't like how the Ministry of Health came and speak about tuberculosis and how it's contracted by people. I mean, it's not one of those diseases that you could just breathe in a man's face and never get it. You have to be exposed for prolonged periods.
But there was fear in the public, Chris.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. So
Genuine
you needed to alleviate the fear by talking about how you get this or not get this, and how you could safeguard yourself. And there's cures. If you get vaccinated, you should be safe. So these are things I think they didn't handle well, and people were really worried about what is happening. And these guys escaped twice. One twice and the other one.
Chris, we are back again this week with Citizens by Investment, CBI, and global visa restrictions. And we're hearing again that Canada recent tightening of visa verification standards for Grenada and OCS partners, signaling further growing international security on CBI programs, building on the existing pressure that we have from the EU and the United States. So, Chris, again, strategy to safeguard national reputational integrity while protecting visa-free access globally.
Exactly. They mentioned nothing about CBI.
But what is
Canada is big in CBI.
But
so they mentioned, they are saying that they are strengthening the review process for people who are applying for visa.
Why are they going after us? The exact same countries that the others are identifying. By chance?
They probably have to explain it, but they didn't say it was us alone. They said they're expanding their program for security checks. And they have a right to do that for people applying for visas coming to the country.
Absolutely, Chris. I mean,
I don't see the link.
more pressure is on, Chris, which goes to the unsustainability of this program. Chris, the Banking Act Amendment matters dealing with unclaimed monies that have been sitting there, private money, you and I money, not me, your money, Chris, that you have not accessed for 10 years. They will deem this money abandoned. But the question is, why is the government why we have about $21.3 million Grenada, but the OCS is about 120 plus, But why are our governments going after this money, Chris?
Well, it has been a process. It's not something new that happens. After 3 years, your account in the bank gets dormant if there's no activity. These monies have to be submitted to ECCB over a period of time, either 7 years or 10 years. And ECCB will hold it for 15 years. And you still have the possibility as somebody account to have gone dormant to go to ECCB and say, I want to reactivate it. And they will reactivate it.
You want your money?
Yes, and it will go through a process. The governments in the region is looking to cut that 15 years to 10 years so that governments could get access in a shorter period of time. Because if you don't claim anything on that amount, that 21.3 million that ECCB is holding, it goes to the government. Right? And the government has the authority. I'm not sure, I haven't seen the bill in total, but I believe the government said, the Prime Minister said, even though they get the money, the 21.3, and somebody comes and say, you know, I back on process and whatever, and I'm ready to reactivate my account, the government will honor whatever proof of the monies that was there that were taken. The thing about it is that, you know, if we have a situation with an estate, and the estate has to the will and so on have to be probate, and there's complexities and difficulties, it may take a long time. And your accounts may go dormant. And if you're living abroad, it might even be even more complex. So the issue is, I think we should have communicated a little more to our people to tell them this is what we're proposing to do with this bill and what are the implications for you as an individual.
I think that was the leader of the opposition main point too. As you've said, more consultation, dialogue, rather than taking a rule on it. And it's
it seems as though government was hiding to do this. And it also introduces the concept of cash flow issues with all the governments of the OECS are seem to be having. Because rumor have it that one of our northern OECS country is looking for money to help finance an aircraft. And I think that is going on. And he has been a very open person about getting this money back to government.
Chris, traffic management and parking enforcement remains, I mean, every week we're on it because we're experiencing it every day probably, but urgent steps, what urgent step the traffic department should take to restore road safety and traffic flow?
You know, when we engage council regulator, we're going to get it, but my understanding is that from the middle of the road to the side of the road, the government has 20 feet. It could be, I could be wrong about the 20 feet. But, so that means the police have authority. But when we see caterpillars, big caterpillars parking on the side of the road, as we see
heavy equipment.
Yes, Grants Valley. Then we have big trucks, SL trucks, parking on the side of the road. We even have some container haulers parking on the side of the road. We have a truck in Montreal, a white long bed truck parking around a corner. It's been there for 3 weeks or more. It won't move. And the police are not saying, because it's a safety hazard. If you have a big truck coming from the opposite direction, you have a big one parked on the side of the road, the road automatically narrows for the individual passing between these two monstrosities. And the issue is, if we have authority for how we park on the road, we must enforce it, because it's a health and safety issue.
It is. Chris, from time to time we talk about the implications of the ongoing war, the implications for small island developing states or region, because there's a trade issue, there's energy issue. We look at our light bill, we're hoping that it will end. The war is not ending, Chris. It seems to be, I wouldn't say escalating, but certainly it's not ending.
Well, you know, we have, Friday is making it 6 months. So the United States engaged Iran in this war, which the president then said it would last 3 weeks. He bombed them out or whatever. He did that, they're still there. Now they're going for economic sanctions in totality to try and squeeze them economic. So it's an economic war now with the usual war. But why didn't they do that in the earlies? Why the economic sanctions now after 6 months? Because things have failed, obviously. And Iran is proving to be a more resistant state that he probably didn't estimate. For us, this is a problem. If this war is 6 months in being and is expected to go on more because of these economic sanctions, what is happening to us who the price of oil was at $90 today, right? If this continues, it's going to hover at 90 and 100 plus.
That's correct.
So we in this part of the world, all our inflationary pressures are going to continue way into 2027.
Because a big part of it is coming from shipping also.
Correct. Freight increases, all of that, fuel price increases and so on. So that's $17 we're paying for a gallon of fuel right now for gas and diesel. Probably might reach $20 or stay with us still June, July, August next year, because Qatar and these states that produce oil have said to get back to 14 million barrels a day to bring the price down is going to take them 6 to 9 months. Yes, Suriname, I think it's Suriname or Guyana, just announced another big fine, and hopefully our regional CARICOM partners could help us reduce the costs of what is going on. But then again, oil and gas is a big secret in this country.
We have the VAT-free day coming up, Chris, on Friday. What does that mean? What would it mean for the average consumer? What kind of savings is he or she expected? To what extent you're encouraging them to make use of it?
Well, they're already 15%. And some smart private sector companies are adding their own percentage.
Of
10% or so. So you can get 25% off.
Right, yeah.
And if you're buying appliances and so on, except vehicles, of course, there's a list that is not going to attract that VAT-free.
Vehicle parts and so on are not considered.
Right, so, but food items for sure, and appliances and so on. If you have the money and you have the cash flow, then it will make sense for you for that. The government is estimated going to lose a certain amount of revenue. I think when the minister announced it, he was saying 18 million for the three months that they're going to do in the 2 days. So it may, in the end, assist people in terms of helping to ease the economy and buy it on. But as I said previously in our program, if you want to really maximize it, you want to buy things in bulk. So let's assume you have to buy 2 tins of sardines. You might want to buy 6.
Okay, that's the point.
And you have to store it.
So that's your advice. That's your advice.
Yeah, and that can help. Help mitigate families' food bill and other things.
Chris, there's a lot of worry. I mean, I know we've touched on it before, but of El Nino and changing weather conditions for us. Some forecasts are predicting droughts. And therefore, what preparation necessary households should make, whether it's their water catchment or something to remember and something to stay attuned of in terms of changing climatic conditions for us. Chris, anything else you want here? We can move on.
I think the El Nino thing is a serious thing. NAWASA have already announced that we need to be careful because they are predicting El Nino will bring drought conditions for us. And we now have to start taking note. And what will be interesting, NAWASA haven't mentioned all the storage facilities that they erected and how that could assist and where we are with that. So that is an important thing on that.
Chris, finally, Political Watch. Senator Sinclair name has been called in as a likely candidate for one of the constituencies. That's in Andrews Northwest, I think. Reports say that he's denied it. But you find things are heating up a bit. What's your sense of things?
Well, there's a rumor going around that election may be called on the 22nd of October. The Prime Minister hasn't said anything. They say they're having a big rally on the 19th and an announcement will be made. So that is a rumor. If that is so, well then parties have to get ready for early election in that sense. So it is going to be the party, the NDC government and party in power still seem to have issues with naming candidates for certain constituencies. They have had before the takedown. We know it's a Cornwall issue now, and
we have the Northwest, St. George.
Right. So there are a few constituencies where they have not named candidates. That could be a positive or a negative because people need to get to know the people. The possible candidate that's going to come forward. You need to reach out, do the necessary work to get people to understand. It's not, you can't just depend on NDC's past history, and they won't have the momentum. So I think that is a concern for the governing party, and something that obviously the opposition will look to capitalize on. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the next few weeks. October 22nd is close by, 19th of
less than 2 months away.
So possibly you're going to see a ramping up of and of course what is also going to be important is the war chest. Who have the bigger war chest?
You mean money?
Yes.
What's your prediction? Who's likely to have more?
Well, normally the incumbents normally have more.
The incumbents have more because they have
Yeah.
more connections, live connections.
That's right. So, you know,
Africa,
it's how
Middle
you
East.
manage it, how you,
Yeah.
I must say, social media presence for the main NNP and the NDC has continued.
Yes.
And is very much prevalent, but
Yeah.
I've hardly seen anything about DPM
DPM.
in terms of social media
Yeah,
presence.
there's some
Yeah.
I've seen
But
some.
nothing compared to.
No, at
to
different
NNP.
level.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And I know a recent survey came out again predicting 10-5 in
10-5,
favor of NNP with some
NNP.
marginal seats in
Seats.
between, 3 or 4 marginal seats. So it's going to see
See how that
how the
goes.
momentum carries over.
Viewers, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be back with Ruggles First and KC. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Fit for Life and Allied Laboratories, providing quality care and expertise. Fit for Life and Allied Laboratories, see our in-house doctors and our pharmacies. Get expert care and quality tests. When it comes to your health, you deserve the best. Fit for Life and Allied Laboratories, we're taking care of Grenada.
Life moves fast, and everything you need should do. At Excel Plaza, convenience meets variety, all in one place. From everyday essentials to special finds, we've got you covered. Excel Plaza, easy shopping, great choices every day.
Welcome back, viewers, and as indicated earlier, we are in the presence of Ruggles Ferguson, KC, that means King's Council, by the way. And Ruggles is going to join us tonight to talk about development issues in the region involving our court, in particular, CCJ. We're going to talk a little about the Judicial and Legal Services Commission and what is happening there. And in general, setting the context in this sense, is what is happening in our region as it relates to authorities and institutions that are there to protect us in terms of regulation, in terms of, you know, political influence and so on, because it will appear, you know, what is happening in the bigger countries. There seems to be a move on generally to dismantle these organizations that are there to protect the ordinary person in terms of regulation, following the right things, and having recourse to some organization that you can say, you know, we need to protect the rights and privileges that we have grown accustomed and is now guaranteed, and is guaranteed to some extent in our constitution. So, Council, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Christian. Good evening.
Welcome back.
Yes, Byron. Thank you for having me.
So, let's start with the CCJ issue and put it in simple terms for our viewers. What is happening with the CCJ and the possible confusion that we're hearing about? And I use confusion loosely there.
Okay. Well, the CCJ, as you know, Caribbean Court of Justice, And in times like these, it's, as I said recently in an article, that it's important to take the opportunity to remind people as to what the CCJ is. The CCJ is the final court for several countries of the region, in fact 5. We have Barbados, Guyana, Belize, and 2 OECS states,
Dominica.
Dominica and St. Lucia. St. Lucia being the last to join the appellate jurisdiction of the CCJ.
Yeah.
So the Caribbean Court of Justice is actually 2 courts rolled into one. So you have the original jurisdiction of the court, in which all countries, including Grenada, are members of that court, and the original of the jurisdiction is like a court of first instance and last instance, because the decision stands when it comes to matters concerning the interpretation of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. So issues such as freedom of movement, which is so critical in the regional integration process. All of these matters that fall under the treaty, the CCJ is the exclusive authority to decide. So if Grenada and St. Vincent have issues with fishing and whatever, free movement, we had the famous Shanique Mary case from Jamaica. Several years, one of the early cases in the original jurisdiction, when Shanique Mary, a Jamaican citizen, landed in Barbados, and they basically deported her. And she sued the state of Barbados. And when I say deported, sent her back the same day, right? Denied her entry. And under the whole freedom of movement charter, the court says, listen, you can't do that. And she was awarded, I think, $35,000 by the court. So the court has its original jurisdiction. The same court, same judges, but they sit in different jurisdictions or departments. So, for example, just as you have a criminal court and judges sitting in criminal law, just so you have judges focusing on civil law. In this case, the original jurisdiction of the court, manned by the same judges, but focusing on matters of the treaty. And then you have the appellate jurisdiction of the court, where the court acts as a final court of appeal. So where it is a final court of appeal now, you can't go to that court first. You have to go to a local court first, and usually in local courts you'll have local high court, and then there's a court of appeal, and if you're dissatisfied with the decision of the court of appeal, you go to the CCJ if you are part of the appellate jurisdiction of the CCJ, or in our case, it's still the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council, so we have to go to the Privy Council. So it's a critical court established, launched in 2005. Became operational then, April 2005. It was established by an agreement among the states, Caribbean states, since 2001. Became operational in 2005 and celebrated its 20th year of operations only last year. Right? There are a series of activities to mark 20 years. It has had 3 presidents in its lifetime, one from Trinidad. First President Michael de la Bastide, a former Chief Justice of Trinidad. Then you had the second president you had was Justice Barron, Dennis Barron, former Chief Justice of the OECS, and then you had followed by Justice Adrian Saunders, a former Chief Justice, acting Chief Justice of the OECS. Right, so we have had these, because the life of the president in the court is 7 years. After 7 years, you retire. Now that background is important to understand the issues, recent issues that arose as a result of the publication of private emails between the judges, never intended to be public, and somehow got into the hands of the media, and they were published, you know. So sometime in July, late July, there was this headline split within the CCJ, and basically what the emails pointed out to is the judges, some of the judges who exchanged those emails expressing dissatisfaction with how the president was handling things. So I categorize it as basically issues that concern styles of leadership, right? Styles of leadership, made accusation that certain accusations about being authoritarian in his approach to certain, these are administrative issues, really.
It's not issues of law.
No, not issues of law.
Every judge will have his opinion, his or her opinion
Yes,
on a particular
right.
case that may come.
Yes.
And you can either agree or disagree.
Yes.
And I think understanding it, if you have 7 judges, you have a casting vote by the chairman or the president.
No, not in this case.
Right.
No, not in this case.
So explain, because normally you will have a odd number so that if you have 3 and 3 agreeing or disagreeing,
Yeah.
then there's a casting vote and 1. So
Well, it's not all the time the 7 judges sit. They sit most of the time, but a panel of final court judges would be like 5.
right.
Like the Privy Council's panel is 5. So you have 1 at the High Court, 3 at the Court of Appeal, 5 at the final court. Sometimes the entire panel sits. And so it really arose out of a dress code issue, right? A dress code issue. As you know, the CCJ, you know, is a Caribbean Court of Justice. The CCJ has always had judges from outside the region.
Yes.
Right?
Particular expertise in area.
Yeah, you had, for example, a UK judge who was the top judge on the law of trust, written several books, Justice Hayden. You have had from the Netherlands, you have had from other places, in this case you have from Nigeria too.
Speaking to the quality of the people who come to the CCJ and learn the experience and expertise.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think what some grabbed on to was the issues like related to a particular judge was supposed to sit on a panel. And you know, in Grenada you have things, the chambers. You have open court where you wear robes and bands.
Yeah.
And then you have chambers where you wear suits. Right? So the CCJ hears matters in chambers and you have the open court.
Yeah.
And this particular judge felt entitled to wear his ceremonial wear from his country, right? Which was not suit.
Yeah.
Right? So based on the president's explanation, because he gave a long statement, based on that now, he insisted that he conforms with what has been traditional, that he wear the suit.
Yeah.
Right? So it came out of that, and on 2 other occasions the judge came out in his usual way. So the president decided to remove him from a panel. Right?
Okay.
And then it really exchanges as, you know, viewed as panel fixing, and but they are all internal, and what it revealed, again, is a strong court,
Yeah.
strong independent judges expressing their views, not afraid to express their views,
Yeah.
and that is always important. And so it has to do with really styles of leadership, and you know, any private.
Not trust and confidentiality or...
No, because
Yeah.
even on positions, and I think Guyana, there was a recent decision in Guyana, and there was some comment in the private emails. So, as usual, all good politicians will pick it up, and so we have this issue. And of course, for the naysayers, it's, well, I told you so, fellas can't run the whole thing. But this happens if you have in any organization the heat passes, whether it's in politics,
You know,
whether it's on the judiciary, whether it's at the
the issue
level of the bar.
is, I think we're looking very short term. When you look at the history of the CCJ in the appellate jurisdiction, and even in the original, the rulings have not been questioned in any entirety in terms of what have come out and so on. So it speaks to the quality of the judges and what they bring to our court, understanding that they have to also take the context of the Caribbean and what happens in the Caribbean. So I'm not hearing a questioning of the quality of judgments. What you're hearing is an internal issue of, as you say, administratively one. The president felt that this is what it was being and somebody disagreed, which they have a right to.
Yeah.
Obviously, you must understand that in any organization, I mean, when I used to manage my organization, you could come dressed a certain way for certain function, but other functions you have to come dressed according to the standard that is laid out. You know, so, but that is minor in my view of what it does to the independence or interfere the independence or the quality of the judges. And I think we're making...
Yeah, that's the point. As I said, the CCJ celebrated 20 years. And it's not just there has been no question about the judgment. The CCJ has been declared
yes.
by the International Court as an court of excellence. A court of excellence. And irrespective of what, really and truly, you have the best minds, among the best minds in the Commonwealth on that court.
So let's take what you say, Raghaus. We have the best minds. It's been operating flawlessly, serving the region. But as you rightly said, 5 countries. The court is set up in Port of Spain in Trinidad. Its finance is, in other words, it's independent in terms of the financial arrangement that have been made 20 years ago. The court is operating on its own finance, but yet the issue is that most of the territories are not members of the court, including Grenada. You know, so we have a problem. We have an issue. Is it one of confidence? Is it one of the politicians? Is it one of the? But let's talk a bit about the because you wrote about this too, Ruggles. You wrote about the responsibilities of the Bar Association, the effectiveness in promoting. In education, in educating the public on the usefulness of having our own court compared to going to the UK. But let's talk about this a bit. Where are we in this process going forward about the court, the Bars Association in particular? What are they doing and how effectively are they in pursuing this matter to be members of this court that we're paid for?
Right. Yes. Now, I just want to make one point, and the reason I started off with the original appellate, we are all members of the court. We are all members. In fact, we are paying for the court.
Yes.
We have already paid for the court. And one of the issues, people feel that if you have to go to court, you have to pay. We pay already, and we're paying for it.
Yes.
But we're not using it.
Not using it.
We're not using it, and that's the issue. Not only that, we have ratified the agreement since 2001. These countries have said we are going to be part of the CCJ. So it's a legal obligation too. But you know, when you have your own and you develop your own, it's always difficult.
20 years?
Because people would always see, and that's how our minds are conditioned, that we are not as good as those outside.
That's correct.
So that's part is a mental thing. Now, our judges here, again, are as good as, for example, anywhere in the Commonwealth, both Justice Saunders and Justice Byron in particular, they were heads of the Commonwealth Judicial Education Institute. The institute does teaches judges all over the Commonwealth, not in the Caribbean, all over the Commonwealth, throughout Africa, right? Canada, all of these places, they teach. Now, the problem is, and you mentioned about bars, and I have constantly advocated for that. Bar associations could do much more than they are doing. And sometimes we don't see our own value.
I want to add here that you headed the Grenada Bar Association, the OECS Bar Association, and the Commonwealth
Caribbean Bar
Caribbean Bar
Yes.
Association.
So it has been my constant appeal. It has been my constant appeal because we have a responsibility for public legal education. Grenada, in fact, Grenada has led the way in so many ways at the level of the bar here. So, for example, in 2001, Law Week was introduced. That was unknown anywhere in the Commonwealth or part of the world.
Yeah.
That was introduced here. Now, almost all the OECS islands have Law Week. We have had the Archibald Ned Memorial Lecture going on 20 plus years. Now is the longest running lecture in the Commonwealth by any bar association.
Yeah.
And then we have had public education, organized public education.
But
Yeah.
are we, because the last time we tried to get the CCJ through the constitution adjustment, because it has to go
Yeah,
constitutional.
it must go, yeah.
And most people would argue politics got involved
Yes.
and failed. And the issue here is, do we adjust how we go out to our people to re-educate them? This is not about politics. As you say,
Well,
we're
that's
paying
fine.
for
Yeah,
our service,
that's
and we're
Yeah.
not fully utilizing it.
Yeah,
And our countries, in terms of legal independence and getting proper decisions, is being suffering because we're not part of the appellate jurisdiction.
Precisely.
And we are-
Access
and by
to justice.
cost,
Yeah.
You
If
know,
you
and
had to
those
go
who
to-
argue for every council,
Yeah,
none of them could go in.
Exactly.
No, it's like a court, like a dream court out there. It's only people with certain resources
Correct.
reach there. Or you get, especially with criminal matters and when there was a death penalty. So in London, there's a particular entity, because they're anti-death penalty,
Yeah.
that supported death penalty cases throughout. So that you can go there, you don't have money, and you can get there and do an appeal.
But what is a likely strategy for us to get into the court or to be a member of the court? Well, we are members
we
of
are
the court, but
members.
we are not utilizing
Right.
it. Do you?
No.
What is a likely strategy? How do you see that happening? How can it happen?
It can't be dependent on politicians, first of all. So, whatever referendum you have, it has to be independently led.
Yeah.
And that's why I say bars have such an important role to play. Because they understand the operation of courts. And they understand the ins and outs of the CCJ, would be able to speak authoritatively on the court and compared with other courts and so on, the strengths of the courts, that others would not be able to speak about because that's legal training, it falls within the realm of legal training. Now, once you have the politicians playing the lead role, in politics there's always opposition. And there will be opposition from a political standpoint.
yes, not from a,
Not from the court, everybody's saying, you support the court, you know, but.
Yes.
Right. So, for example, to change the, just to use an example, to change the oath of allegiance for here, from His Majesty the King to Grenada, the CCR, that's the Citizens for Constitutional Reform, led it.
Yes.
And basically did everything, did the drafting and so, met with the opposition separately, met with the government separately, met with the key entities. And everybody agreed. And the CCR played the main role.
So is this something the CCR could play?
In constitutional reform, certainly,
Yeah, in this
certainly.
matter? Has it been raised at all?
But more than that, more than the CCR sees the involvement of the bars. The bar associations need to be more activists in its approach. Because you have so much to contribute and lead the way, even legal reform and so. There's a tendency to see your role as very
You call them
restrictive.
eternal watchdogs.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, right? And in order to make the system effective. So, for example, one of the good things about what is happening in the CCG, as I see it, listen, this is a tempest in a teapot. What you have now is a lot of people writing about the CCG and saying, listen, the CCG is stronger than this. I said, even if once in 21 years you have a problem, then you have an excellent record, right? Excellent record, more than 90-something%.
Is what the problem is.
That's the point.
It's not something that attacks the, the quality of the code, the judgments they have made, and so on. It's an internal issue that.
That's scandals, real scandals.
So the public had a right to know about this, or this was confidential?
No, it was confidential.
It was confidential.
So it's not something that this is internal correspondence.
Yeah.
So if you know personally you have, I have some internal correspondence, I see something about Chris, something critical about Chris. And Chris will vex with me, you're saying that. But so that is not intended to be.
I know, but I want to go back again to the CCJ and the fact that 9 countries are still not members of it. I mean, is that a failure of Caribbean political leadership? Because you said you're not given the leadership. But where's the failure? But where's the failure?
I mean, let's take our thing. We had to get a 2/3 majority in a referendum to go over.
Yes.
And that is a limitation.
But this differs in some islands.
Right.
Barbados, for example, they didn't have to do this.
Correct.
And one of the
Hence it
features
Yes.
of the CCJ, those that have joined the appellate jurisdiction of the CCG, none needed a referendum.
That's the point.
All of it was done
So we
parliament,
limited.
right?
Yes.
So Barbados needed no referendum. They need special majority in parliament, opposition and government agree. Guyana did not have a final court, so the CCJ was an addition because they had abolished the Privy Council many years ago. And Belize, no referendum. Dominica, no referendum. St. Lucia, no referendum. Grenada needs a referendum, and Antigua needs a referendum. So what will happen? On any issue you put in a referendum, you get 2/3?
Yes. It's a tall order.
It's a tall order.
While we're on the CCJ, it was interesting that the question of CARICOM and the appointment of the Secretary General, we know there was some controversy there with Trinidad and Tobago versus the rest. I think Jamaica is involved. And the matter was passed on to the CCJ for hearing, for ruling, but I understand it won't be non-binding or stuff. But how do you view the CCJ being used in this regard? Do you see it as the appropriate institution to have dealt with this?
Well, in a sense, it has jurisdiction to deal with these kinds of matters, and you let the legal minds deal with it. I'm not too sure why these countries, particular countries, again, they wish to pursue the issue, but it's their right to do so. Trinidad seems very strong on it. The majority of CARICOM countries have agreed, and but the CCJ is the institution, the legal minds, and so that would be best to interpret it there. But this is the kind of matter that can be internally negotiated and dealt with.
It didn't
right?
run to us there.
So when you hear it's not going to be binding, the question that you have to ask among our CARICOM territories, couldn't we handle this differently?
But it could have, of course it could have.
We could have got to mediation.
So many people, that's why I said they could have called you guys. All they needed is some trained mediators. But as you see, certain countries seem almost hell-bent on mashing up CARICOM. That's part of the reality, you know, and that's why you have to be particularly strong, right? Particularly strong in this period.
If you have 2 countries out of how much of us in the CARICOM now? Is that about 12?
About
15. 14.
2 objecting. So majority obviously doesn't rule, or they try to appease Jamaica and Trinidad by saying, okay, we're going to try and get a 3rd opinion.
But was it a question of more process that Trinidad felt was
Trinidad
flawed?
objected on the process in total. And
the
issue is...
But what process? But as I say...
The process has been there for years.
Yes.
But CARICOM the state of CARICOM showed up particularly with the U.S. Invasion, or call it the occupation of Venezuela and the occupation of the Eastern Caribbean.
yes.
And you could have seen CARICOM had no
So,
common, everybody
No,
was...
well, everybody wants to kowtow.
Exactly.
Everybody wants to,
So
and
it
then
clearly showed up
It
here.
backfires after. It backfires on everybody.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right?
if you-
Because in these things, there are no permanent friends and permanent
Correct.
enemies. And you see how the U.S. policy operates. And
I want-
particularly in the present period.
Yeah.
the U.S. for second and third.
Good, yeah. I want to move a bit within the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. We had a judicial appointment and the Jimmy Bristol ruling. Here in Grenada, just to give it a little, we had the former AG, that is Jimmy Bristol, Casey successfully challenged the Judicial and Legal Service Commission in the High Court, winning a ruling that declared Justice Eddie Ventos' appointment to the OECS Court of Appeal unconstitutional because he lacked the mandatory 15 years of active practice as an advocate under Section 83. How did this happen? I mean, we are saying that are we losing confidence in the Judicial and Legal Service Commission? What went wrong here?
You see, far from it, because again, what it shows, even the GLSC can be challenged
Yeah.
as the ultimate body. And again, it's important to understand the structure in the Eastern Caribbean, because we have a very unique structure. In the world, when you compare Grenada, the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court is a special court when you compare it internationally. There are not many courts like the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court.
What's the fundamental
Because
difference?
the difference is that you have 6 sovereign territories, independent states, falling under one court. So, for example, you have in the Eastern Caribbean, the key institution for the appointment of judges is the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. And that commission is chaired by the Chief Justice. And you have the composition, member of the Court of Appeal, judge, one of the PSs too. They have, rotating PSs. And what you have is that court, that institution is the institution that selects judges throughout the OECS. So it's the same institution that selects a judge for Grenada, for BVI, for Antigua, Dominica, St. Lucia.
So did they fail in their duty?
Well, the court ultimately ruled that Eddie Ventos' appointment was null and void on the basis of so we operate under a court's order. It's important to understand these systems too. We have a constitution, but there's also a court order, the court's order of 1967, that's also incorporated in the Constitution. So, for example, when you read our Constitution, you won't see about the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, the Chief Justice, and so. All of these things fall under the court order, but the court order is incorporated under the Constitution. That's where the judicial provisions really are mainly spelled out in the court's order. So the court's order says, of 1967, it sets out the qualifications to be a high court judge, and so you must practice as an advocate for 10 years.
Yeah.
Or sat as a judge in some Commonwealth jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And for the Court of Appeal, you must have either spent 5 years as a judge, or you must have spent 15 years practicing as an advocate, right, for 15 years.
Yes, right.
Now, the issue with Justice Ventos is that he's an academic. He's a High Court judge and a master probably for about three years. So he's not have qualified there. And he was never really in the true sense of what people would generally understand as advocate, an advocate before the courts, right? No. In the case, and there were very strong arguments on both sides, very creative
But the
arguments.
appointment was flawed. It didn't follow the
Well,
rules.
that's
bottom
what,
line.
right,
That's
the
what the
court,
court ruled.
Yeah,
right,
the
that's
court
what the court
ruled.
ruled.
That's correct,
Because
yeah.
it reached the court.
Exactly.
If it didn't reach the court, then there'd have been no issue.
We have to take a short
Right,
break now
yes.
anyway. Viewers, stay with us. We'll be right back with Ruggles Focus and Casey. Stay with us.
Is the air you're breathing really clean? At Allied Laboratories, we offer indoor air quality testing for commercial and residential spaces. Our rapid test results provide precise ratings of common air contaminants and will recommend the best actions to eliminate them effectively. Why do an indoor air quality test? Protect immunocompromised occupants. Detection of mold and bacteria. Identify volatile organic compounds. Identify particulate matter. Identify harmful pollutants that may otherwise go undetected. Enhances safety and comfort. Breathe easier and live healthier. Allied Laboratories, bringing quality laboratory services directly to you.
In Grenada, sports aren't just a game, they're a way of life. They teach discipline, teamwork, and resilience. They inspire the next generation to push boundaries and chase excellence. That's why the Investment Migration Agency of Grenada is proud to support sports initiatives as part of our commitment to youth and national development. When we invest in sports programs, we invest in the future. We invest in the health and well-being of our youth, and we invest in broadening Grenada's reach, proudly connecting our athletes, our talent, and our nation to a global community. Together, we all go further. The Investment Migration Agency. Unlock the possibilities.
Welcome back, viewers. We're here with Ruggles Focus and Casey, and we're discussing various legal matters, regional and local. Ruggles, in Antigua, Prime Minister Gaston Brown publicly threatened to deport and declare persona non grata a non-national magistrate whose sentencing in firearms cases is considered too lenient, sparking fierce condemnation from regional legal associations. The question here, Ruggles, is where is the line between the Prime Minister's right to criticize sentencing policy, which is what he did, and unconstitutional attempt by the executive to intimidate the judiciary? How do you see
That's
this
a good way
question?
of putting it. I think you answered the question, right? Because
Did he do
you
that?
cannot, as a prime minister,
Yeah,
I mean, come and talk, and in terms of the language, you know, if you listen to the tape, you know, brother man, if you can
I remember we supposed to have
sentence.
separation of
First of
powers.
all, disrespectful.
Yes.
Yep.
You have the separation of powers policy that is underpinned in our constitutions, that there are three arms of the state, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. First of all, they are co-equal arms of the state. The executive has its function, executive reflected in cabinet,
Yeah, yeah.
determines policy.
yeah,
You can, if the executive says build a health center in every parish versus build a hospital, or use money for roads
yeah,
instead of sports, that goes. The court can't say anything. That's a policy decision.
yeah.
Same thing, the parliament passes laws. It's the only entity to pass laws. Cabinet can't pass
Yeah.
laws. They can channel laws to parliament, and they have the majority in parliament, so parliament passes laws. But the judiciary is probably the most independent of all, because they are appointed differently. That's not true elections.
Yeah.
They are appointed differently.
Yeah.
And they are expected to uphold the law and interpret the law as they see it. And what they say the law is, that is what the law is. Right? So if they say the ABC means XYZ, then XYZ it means. If If you disagree, you appeal.
That's right.
And there's an appellate process. So you sitting in a country and a judicial officer in your country, and you sit there and say, listen, if you don't want to impose stiffer penalties, then leave voluntarily, or we have you deported, and ends it by saying this is the Prime Minister speaking. He has no such power, right? Power resides
What was the
in
reaction,
Constitution.
regional? What was the reaction to the
Well, I
within
didn't think
the
they
OCS?
expected the reaction, probably the kind of reaction because these things affect your image internationally, and that's what when you go so far, and criticism is acceptable. You know, you can criticize judicial officers, you can criticize, but the way you do it, and especially if you're a member of the executive, you have issues, and there are ways to challenge.
But
You
he
know,
threatened.
call me.
And
Yeah,
that's the
that's the
that's the
part.
problem.
That's not just threaten, but saying I have the power to deport
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
So those are the very things
That is
that
intimidation.
create the mistrust for local and institutions. Because Antigua, commendably, I must say, had the efforts to join the Caribbean Court of Justice. Which is exactly these things people will refer to, right?
Yeah,
As
yeah.
politicians will try
We
to
do have
intimidate
confidence
the
in
judge,
us, yeah.
right? And the judge had to toe the line, these things. But he has no such power. He has absolutely no such power. And there's a backlash. And they have done a fair job. I think those wronged him with more sober minds.
Yes.
To quickly try to deal with the situation.
Has he apologized?
No, he has not apologized. The bar of St. Lucia, of Antigua, asked him to apologize, and his classic, probably characteristic response was piss off. Right?
Oh my God.
That was his response.
Serious?
But then when the backlash came now, and you had statements from the OECS bar, OGBA, and the Commonwealth Lawyers Association, the heads of judiciary in the region, and then, you know, they issued these statements. They wrote to the Chief Justice saying, well, we have no intention of deporting anybody. It's really a backtrack, right? But you can't. You
shouldn't.
because it's disrespect. And you bring in disrepute. Right? This is a pillar. The judiciary is a pillar of the state. And I'm
society.
sure you will live to regret the state.
Yeah.
You know?
Chris, any?
Yeah, no, I
closing
think,
comment?
you know, we're seeing a trend probably emanating from the US, you know, that there is no need for regulation. There is no need for independent bodies to govern critical aspects of our society. And there's a systematic dismantling of these institutions. And I'm hoping that that doesn't carry over and we catch that cold in the region, because we have excellent institutions in the OECS in particular, and to CARICOM to a lesser extent. But OECS, we have united judicially, security-wise,
Yes,
a lot of
yes.
things we
Yeah.
have here
Yeah.
in common that works for us.
Yeah.
And we have to pay attention, because when we have these, you know, these non-starters trying to send a message that, you know, they have more influence than they ought to have, you know, we have to be careful and respond accordingly. And I think we need to preserve what we have.
Yeah. Ruggles, I mean, if you could summarize the whole, I mean, we're going back to the CCJ, where we are, the bar associations, not just the local one, but the regional ones or those in various territories, getting involved to lead that initiative for us to become, for the CCJ to represent us,
Yes.
to work for us, you know. What do you see as any short-term strategy that you would promote at this juncture?
Education and information is empowerment,
Yeah.
right? That's basically the starting point, because it's about people knowing. You know, I remember after, because I was involved in the 2016 and 2018 constitution reform process.
Yeah.
And I was on a program the Thursday, I said, where everybody felt that, listen, this man got shut up, he just get all these licks. So it was George Grant's program, in fact, and I was explaining why I say, well, you know, you have to accept the decision of the people. You know, I think it is regrettable And I was saying why, and was giving some examples about the CCJ and how important.
Yeah.
I think that was just after we rejected, not the first referendum, but the CCJ.
Yeah.
So a lady called in. I was from her. She called in. She says, Mr. Forster, how is only now you're telling us that? She said, if I know that all that before I vote for the CCJ. So I say, well, madam, that's what we've been always saying. It's just only today listening. Right? But that is all that has been said. And you know the problem? Everybody says after 2016 referendum, you need more education.
That's right.
Right? You need more education. After 2018, we didn't know enough. You need more education. And you know, nobody is dealing with it. Nobody is dressed. So in 10 years' time when we have it, that's the same thing that will be said.
Absolutely.
But you're proposing that the bars, this is something
I
that the bar
think that
association-
the bars need to
lead.
Not just,
Yeah.
to lead.
But
to
it's
lead
just
the
one
effort.
entity.
Yes.
They need more entities.
Yes,
Yeah.
and bring in,
Yeah.
get other entities involved because you don't want it to come across as political. You're really educating on our own institution. You feel people to vote on the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, you will vote for it,
Yeah.
right? Or the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, right? People will find reasons to vote against it. Anything we have, right? Whatever it is, people see. Even when they setting up the University of the West Indies, right?
And we have good success stories.
That's the point.
The
Well,
ECCB,
yes.
you know, we just celebrated
Well-
50 years at the pegging of the dollar, and how important that is, in the especially our young people who shop a lot
Yeah.
on social media.
Yes,
And those
yes.
platforms. Without that peg, it would have been significantly different, as we see in Trinidad and other countries where they don't have that. So, I
And
mean,
CCJ speaks through his judgments now.
yeah.
And in fact, when it first started, people say, well, CCJ is a code that would vote for the politicians, rule
Yes,
for the
yeah.
politicians will be under the control. Barbados was the first country to enter it. And just before Mia Motley came to power, the Erskine Sandiford government was saying, you know, we had to move from the CCJ, only ruling against us. Right? And said that actually close to the election period. They have ruled against governments consistently.
Yeah.
And that shows independence. Yeah.
Of course,
yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
of
Obviously.
course. But again, as I said, the court is strong, and even the criticisms of the president is known to be an outstanding academic, good organizer. I consider him a very good organizer. In fact, he led the court's academy. There's an academy of law for several years. And several initiatives throughout the region. Probably the most known and highly rated that impacts is in 2023, there was the Needham's Point Declaration in Barbados on criminal justice reform in the region, bringing all the stakeholders together to talk criminal justice reform. The AGs, the judges, the commissioners of police, commissioners of prison, DPPs, bars.
But that's
And
the
there's
point
a
too. Can the
comprehensive
judges
document.
also be used within the region to promote the CCJ?
They did that on
Well,
the 20th
well, of course,
That
you
was
can,
that.
you can have several, it can be done creatively.
Yeah.
But we'll eventually get there.
We will.
Inevitably,
Inevitably.
we'll get there. The question is how long.
We'll end on this note. Ruggles, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate this. This is all the time we have, viewers. We want to thank MTV management. We want to thank the technical staff. And we'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Bye-bye.